week, by Thursday, what I want them to do is, Thursday is the quiz, so they're going to need a quiz on what we're talking about here today. And then by the next class meeting, they have to post something about the 2 videos that are the next thing we're doing. So that's next up. It's talking about Idiocracy and Elysium. And you don't have to write about both of them. You can choose one or the other, although it would be really cool if you could contrast them. And I didn't pair them up for any reasons. It was just, what was available and mo. But I find that when you put 2 things together like that, you always see comparisons. You always see parallels between them. So I think the best one I ever saw, there was 2 films shown at the same time, was Apocalypse Now and Zulu. And I don't know if any of you have seen Zulu.
I haven't seen either of those. I've never seen
Apocalypse Now is set in Vietnam, and it's just this horrible war. Zulu is this small group of British officers in a fort in Africa, and they're being attacked by Zulus, and there are just thousands and thousands and thousands of them. They all have spears, but there's so many of them that it seems like there's absolutely nothing they can do. And they're up against these impossible odds. And the ending is the Zulus decide that the white man is so powerful and so cool that they just give up. They just say, well, we'll quit trying to kill you. We'll just go away. The opposite of Apocalypse Now.
That seems unlikely.
Yeah, but it's supposed to be based on a true story. Huh. All right, so that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so player piano.
Who's finished it? Just a couple.
Yeah. We gotta go spoiler on it. No way around it because the ending is so horrible.
I'm leaving now.
It really is.
I mean, there's really hope for the culture. I'm looking at it and saying, they're rebelling. They're tearing everything down. And they're like, hey, let's fix it again.
Hey, what are you guys doing over there? Hey, they're screwing things up. Get them.
We're fixing a machine that makes a drink that nobody likes, just so that it'll work again. I don't know, his humor is so dark.
It really is.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons I really like Slaughterhouse 5, is just his ridiculously dark sense of humor.
Yeah.
And the kind of lack of empathy for humanity.
And he was just a tremendously nice person. Anybody who ever met him said that Vonnegut was the nicest person you could ever be in your life.
Except he chain smoked.
Well, yeah, he probably didn't spell real good, but yes,
So
he
was my
was.
grandmother. That was like for me.
What's he pushing for? We know what he's pushing against. He doesn't like the dehumanization of people.
So obviously he wants the rehumanization of people.
Well, not necessarily. Well, rehumanization would mean that we are completely dehumanized. I think he wants people to realize that we are humans and we're intelligent living creatures that should be able to govern our own lives and not rely on others.
Yeah. But if that's the message, and he's most often described as a humanist, basically what that means is he believes in the quality of human life. He believes in human beings as people who can overcome their own negative situations. So what's he doing there?
I think he wants people to find meaning and to have the opportunity to find meaning. And it's something that comes up in, he wrote another book called Sirens and Titans. I don't know if you ever read that, but the actual, like the engine that drove the spaceship was powered off of the universal will to become. And that was it. It was magic. It just worked off of the ability to become something else, to find a new way.
I'm having flashbacks to the Hitchhiker's Guide log
Exactly,
entry
that's
about
what I was
God.
thinking.
It was a long time.
And then
before
promptly
Hitchhiker.
vanished off of logic.
Yeah. It's really, I don't know, he's so hard to nail down, but what do you think in terms of closure? Do you have any closure at all? Did anybody get what they deserve?
No.
Well, I think in a sense it kind of, ended like very true to life. I mean, you have all these groups out there that are pushing for different things, but yet they really don't get anywhere. And I think that's kind of how this one headed too. I mean, they're pushing for end to the machines, but yet what do? They fix the machine.
Yeah.
And yet nobody seems to there's a staggeringly low amount of casualties. Like, nobody seems to be killed or incarcerated over this. It seems more like political parties arguing rather than the human movement versus we like the machines.
Yeah. And you've always got to have something to blame. When I try to read this now, I think about South Park. Because there have been so many South Park episodes where you find something that you're angry with and you just get mad at that even though it's not really the problem. Like, they took our germs. That one was good. And the one where they were angry at Walmart. Because Walmart is evil. And then they killed Walmart, and then they moved on to a new store. And they all did the same thing at that new store. Because you're very much like Vonnegut.
I don't think Vonnegut managed to write and create a story within a week. Every week.
Yeah.
He wrote an awful lot of novels, though.
That's entirely true, but just the fact that they're able to find a topic, write a story about it, make an episode, and air it in a week is staggering.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I really like this. I'm probably going to hang on to it. And I really like stories where the main character is deeply entrenched in the negative side of the story and comes to realize that what he's supporting is no bueno.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons I like Paul.
Yeah.
And I like the name Paul, too. It's a good name. Good name for a protagonist like Bob.
He's got so many characters who flip. So Paul does, and then Finnerty flips very early.
Oh, yeah.
He's been iconoclastic since the very beginning of the novel. Who's Paul's roommate?
Garth.
Garth. And yeah, Garth, I didn't see that one coming. Tried to kill a tree. And then who was the second in command? The guy who really couldn't talk much. All he ever did was talk about engineering concepts.
This is
I can't remember.
Hagstrom?
No.
No, that wasn't it.
Kroner's the main guy. And Kroner's second in command is...
Was it Lasher?
One of them was Lasher.
Lasher. Which one was Lasher?
Lasher was the one that Finnerty
Ayers,
was
wasn't
hanging
it?
out with at the bar.
Oh, Lasher's the guy from out in the Badlands. Well, whoever it is, he's the guy last person you would expect to flip because he loves the machines. He can't even communicate with other human beings because he loves the machines so much, and he ends up flipping.
I didn't expect the parallel story about the Shah.
I love how the Shaw talks.
Every time I'm reading the page, I'm trying not to laugh and drop the book. My roommate's looking at me like, "The hell are you reading, Vonnegut? Why are you laughing?" But just like I like guessing from like reading the synopsis and everything, I wouldn't have guessed anything about the Shah in the book, and it was a really nice change of tone from what I expect from Vonnegut and what I expected from the story.
Yeah.
Because the last dystopic book I read and rather enjoyed was Brave New World, so I was expecting the worst.
Yeah.
Because after that, it's just like you finish the book and you just kind of lay in your bed and curl into the fetal position.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's like you read this and it's like, hey, this is funny. I'm not sad and crippling and suffering from crippling depression.
They can do that, I think, sometimes with I mean, I've seen a lot of dystopias where they just throw something in that's so unexpected. I mean, it should be
Bureaucracy.
expected. Yeah. And if you watch, it's not the best show in the world, but Revolution.
I watched like half the season and I gave up. I couldn't do it anymore. It was getting silly.
I'm on like episode 19 of 20 right now.
Yeah. Well, this isn't a spoiler or anything. It's just
Yeah, when the world blacks
The
out.
one where they're burning 100 candles during the daytime and
Yeah.
wearing perfectly like nice fresh clothes.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Well,
And just
it doesn't
the
mean you don't need
woman has
electricity
an
to
endless
wash
supply of leather
clothes.
trousers.
Yes,
But there's a scene in this one where they have to go down to Mexico. because one of the characters' sons is down in Mexico. And they get to the border, and there are all these Americans standing there saying, you know, we'll work for money, and they're all trying to get across the border to Mexico because Mexico's the place you want to be. And I look at that going, that's so implausible. No, that's not so implausible.
Where was this again? What was this?
It's a series called Revolution. It's kind of a Hunger Games knockoff. You know, a young woman who shoots a bow and arrow a lot. And
The main premise is that every electrical source on planet Earth stops functioning all at once. Like all power just,
And I still don't see how that would make Mexico.
and it goes from there.
If they've got a good.
Well, because there's so many people here, and there's all these different factions vying for control of what's left of the U.S. that everybody wants out. So they either go up to Canada or down to Mexico.
yeah, I'm wondering what they're going to say is going on in Canada. So,
I like the character.
It's cool
of Sean.
hearing.
I think it really highlights the way
I thought it
he
was
goes
cool
around.
without power, right?
He calls everybody in America slaves.
Yeah.
We think it's such a bad thing that he has slaves, but in this book, everybody is treated like a slave. They don't have choices. They're
Yeah.
not free.
and
And
he is,
he recognizes that, and he tells it to us, and we don't want to believe it, but that's really the truth.
yeah, and Vonnegut loves that kind of character who comes in as an outsider, who doesn't understand any of the rules, and because of that, he sees things more clearly than anybody else does. And they're all trying to explain to him, no, you're wrong, you're not a slave because,
Because he's not a slave. Because
Yeah.
he said so.
he ended up being a fairly sympathetic character. I had this little tragic laugh at the wife of the novelist. So this guy, he's a novelist, and he writes what he thinks he has to write, and so he can't keep his job. And so she has to go and prostitute herself so that he can keep writing novels, so he doesn't have to prostitute himself as a writer. But yeah, the Shaw takes pity on her. Yeah, he's a good character.
You know, out of all of the fictional wives that I think I hate the most, she takes the cake. She's just not one iota of support.
Ideas.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just not one iota of support for her husband.
Can somebody speak up for poor Anita?
She's pushing him on. She's doing what she's been acculturated
She's
to
very
do.
super-
My grandmother's name is Anita, and she is a wonderful person.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
She's standing behind him and pushing him forward. That's what her role in society is supposed to be in this book.
Right.
She's not supposed to be there to be a shoulder to cry on. He needs to go to the bar and find a mistress for
Is that kind of a mythology that was there in the 1950s, that the woman's role is to be behind the scenes propelling her man forward? I mean, very much. We have things like behind every good man is a good woman or something along those lines.
Yeah.
So she does what she needs to do.
But she only does it to a certain extent. When he wants to go in a different direction, she doesn't support it at all.
Yeah. Yeah, I
that. She
mean,
doesn't think that's a forward direction. I mean, her job is to push him forward.
yeah. And Vonnegut, I gotta say, a couple of people have commented on this in their readings of this. He's not the friendliest person in the world toward women.
No.
His female characters are usually just kind of ugly.
One-dimensional.
Yeah. And sometimes even worse than that. And he tells stories out of his own life where things like that happen, where he said he was at a dinner party where a woman was going on and on about how the Nazis were misunderstood and how, just saying horrible, horrible things. And he said he's getting more and more angry. And finally, some older friend of his pulls him aside and he says, her job is to look pretty. And she's very good at that. Ignore every word that comes out of her mouth because that's not what she's wanted for. And it's icky, but it's kind of a nice solution because what he was saying was nobody listens to women anyway, so why should it get you upset? So yeah, I mean, that gets into the historical kind of criticism. But he is a product of his time. I don't think he could really, I don't remember any positive female characters out of any of his novels.
On the other hand, you always see, pretty much any other novel. Females are always just this pretty little bimbo who's super duper nice and everything, and so you get his kind of novels where they're like mean, nasty, crotchety people, and it makes you look at them from a different angle maybe, so it could be a good thing.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and dystopian fiction is littered with novels that mostly focus on male characters rather than females. Like you were saying, they always come off as the blonde bimbo, like Lenina in Brave New World.
Yeah.
And it's only more recently that we've seen more female heroes and heroines in dystopian fiction.
Yeah.
And it's always a young adult novel.
Yeah. And there's been a lot of discussion of that when we're looking at science fiction in general, about how women's roles have really progressed. And when I was in graduate school, like 20 years ago, they were talking about the idea that Sigourney Weaver in Aliens was the first feminine protagonist, female protagonist, who managed to kill the bad guy without the help of a man. And it took that long, because before then you always need the proverbial woodsman coming in and chopping up the wolf. You needed a man.
And see, even then, I remember discussing that with my dad, and he was playing devil's advocate, and he brought up the point that and it would have been like really a hackneyed argument to have, but it's like, oh, she wouldn't know how to use the rifle that Hicks hadn't taught her. And I was like, if you were anybody else, I'd have hit you.
Yeah.
Because that's just dumb.
But I mean,
But then you think about it, and you're like, yeah, I mean, she didn't seem interested in until she started fiddling with it, and he showed her how it works.
But to be fair, everyone does have to be taught by someone. Even that
Right.
instructor guy could have been taught by a woman. How do we know? I mean, I don't know.
yeah.
But I mean, Ellen Ripley is a great example of the female heroine.
Yeah.
Who can take down the bad guy herself and without any help from anybody else.
Yeah. And, it's not perfect. I mean, she doesn't really need to be running around in panties and a tank top. I
No.
think there's a little bit of objectification going on there, but at the same time, she does a really good job of what she does.
A friend of mine the other day asked me if I knew any good, like what's your favorite like sci-fi brawl? And my mind immediately went to the end of Aliens with Ripley in the power loader fighting the alien queen, because I love that whole scene.
Yeah.
Because it to me that solidified that Ripley was a badass, and that was really big in the 80s.
Yeah. And that became sort of iconic. I think that was the first time that I'd actually seen somebody doing that with a machine that actually enhances your body. And it's so common now. It's where am I seeing
Took
that?
it to new extremes with anime.
All their anime, Robotech and
That's
Gundam.
a good idea.
and
We should put that in
Evangelion.
everything.
And then we brought it back with Pacific Rim.
Pacific Rim, that's a good example. Avatar ends with that type of thing.
You kind of see the female being a badass in Pacific Rim. Like she helps him out in the mech. But of course, she does have to have her man helping her. So.
Yeah.
Oh wait, no, weren't those the two duo chicks who were in their own mech? Gypsy Danger, I think, or something.
Yeah.
No, Gypsy was the two main characters, Mako and Raleigh.
Oh, okay.
But there was and I mean there's scary female protagonists. There was the Russian pilot there, the two blonde. I was surprised they were Russians. They looked like Aryan stereotypes. Very tall, blue eyes, jet blonde hair. I was like, and she was like, it was like, wow, if she punched me, I'd probably fall hard.
Yeah. So have any of you read enough Vonnegut to know who Kilgore Trout is? No? Vonnegut had so many ideas that he couldn't write all the novels. And so he created this character named Kilgore Trout. And when he wanted to make a point, he would say, it was just like a book that he'd read by Kilgore Trout, his favorite science fiction novelist. And Kilgore Trout just writes all these really bizarre things. And they could be entire novels because they're just brilliant ideas. And where I'm going with this is the best Vonnegut female character I know of is actually not written by Vonnegut. There's an author named Philip Jose Farmer, and he took the idea of Kilgore Trout and he said, well, why don't I write a novel as Kilgore Trout? And so he took Vonnegut's fake science fiction author and created a whole novel around him where it's a lot like Hitchhiker's Guide. It's the guy who's flying around the universe, going to these different planets. And each planet is a Kilgore Trout style, kind of little mini novel. So like there's one planet where the inhabitants are wheels and they have arms that stick out of the hubs and go down to the ground and they push themselves around, just go wherever the wind takes them. And when they fall over, they can't get up again, so they die. And, he just interacted with these guys for a long time. He tries to patch one of the old timers and just really, really hurts him. And
Sounds like Douglas Adams wrote it.
It's very much like that, yeah. And it's
So I was just thinking, that
hilarious.
sounds like something out of the Hitchhiker's Guide.
Yeah. But the male protagonist is pretty average kind of guy, but he's accompanied by an android named Schwartz. And she puts him in his place over and over again. So it's nice. And I think maybe Farmer's playing with that. He's saying, yeah, I'm going to maybe one up Vonnegut if I had some positive women characters in here. But yeah, she's really a likable character.
But she's a robot.
Or
So
is
she's not a she.
or is she an AI?
I think she's accusing him of being, what do you call it? It's not sexist, it's
Speciesist.
speciesist, if you could
Speciesist,
consider them species.
I'm sorry, Kilgore Trap. I can't let you do that.
But yeah, she says, basically, you don't understand who I am because all you see is the machinery. And, they have a sexual relationship going on the whole time. So she apparently functions quite well, despite the fact that she's an android. Dated things in this one. This is the oldest one we're going to read. Any of you familiar with anything older than this?
My grandmother?
Jules Verne, but he wasn't really predicting the future. He was predicting what you could do based off of what they had then.
Yeah, I kind of put him more in the fantasy realm of things because he's,
A train to the moon.
yeah, a lot of it
Or
is quite
Cannonball
plausible.
too.
But H.G. Wells, a lot of his stuff was very good science fiction. And I don't know, is it a mistake to assume that these things have become canonical? So that if you're reading more modern science fiction, you're going to see references back to earlier stuff and recognize it even if you haven't read it?
Oh yeah. I do usually. I can see references to older science fiction works, and I can be like, oh, I got that reference.
Well,
Okay.
You're not going to recognize the references because the idea of a reference is you have to have read the source material to get the reference. So obviously, if they do reference it, you're not going to notice it
Unless you already get the reference.
unless you already get the reference.
Well, if I can set down some that are, I think, really important, and if you don't know them, you should know them. The Time Machine, the Morlocks, and the Eloi. Do you know anything about the Morlocks and the Eloi?
Yeah.
Okay.
I saw the movie.
So something.
Morlocks
Okay.
were driven underground, the Eloi lived above them.
Yeah.
And the Morlocks were the humans, right? Or they were both the humans.
They were. Yeah. They
Okay,
split in two directions.
Split in half.
Two different species, I think, or something like that.
Yeah.
They were competing for the survival.
And when the time traveler shows up, he thinks he's hit this absolute paradise because the Eloi are these happy, pretty people who just run around and do whatever they want, but they're all complete airheads. And then he finds out that they're just there for food for the Morlocks. The Morlocks come up and grab a couple of them every once in a while and take them down and cook them.
Yeah, in that case, they're the sheep, right? He's like the dog, and then the Morlocks are like the pigs. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Pretty much, yes.
Because he's aware of what's going on. He doesn't really have the ability to change it. He does eventually change it, but it's more because his time machine blows up. I mean, I'm going off the movie here.
Yeah, in the book he just hauls ass. In the book he's just like, I don't like this place, I'm getting out of here.
Yeah, he goes back because that's the plot of the book is he's telling the story.
Yeah, he goes forward first, and he goes to the very end of the world when the sun is almost dim, and there are these just nasty things crawling around and not much left at all. And then he goes back to where he started out. But that's one of the most common themes that you'll see played on in science fiction because everybody knows that, and it's just really canonical kind of text. What's another canonical text in early science fiction? Well, Brave New World. Several of you have read Brave New World.
Isn't that the anthology?
No,
That's Brave New World. Brave New World by Aldous Huxley.
So the name of the anthology that we're using is a reference back to another piece of science fiction. It's an allusion.
See, I didn't get the reference because I haven't read it. Why does nobody listen to me?
Yeah. Brave New World is very darkly humorous. It's very much like Vonnegut. So things like, who's their deity?
Ford.
Henry Ford, yeah. So they worship Henry Ford because he mechanized things. And their attitude towards sex is just they'll say, you look kind of tense. You should go have some sex. How about her right there? And
Yeah, chastity doesn't exist.
yeah. And so the outsider there is somebody who actually believes in love and actually believes in the things that we believe in now And he's completely stomped into the ground by this culture. He doesn't make any headway at all.
And the population is psychologically controlled with drugs.
Oh.
One drug, one particular drug, but they're all controlled by it. They're all made docile by it.
Yeah.
Read you?
Soma, I think.
Yeah, Soma.
Soma. And that's really common, the whole idea that the entire nation has to take a certain drugs. One of the happier Vonnegut stories is called Welcome to the Monkey House. And it focuses around a technology, a medical technology, where he is assuming that they could make a pill that, okay, here's how it starts. The guy's at the zoo with his kid, and they're looking at the monkeys, and the monkeys are all masturbating. And the kids say, what are they doing? And he doesn't want to explain it to his kids, and he says, there's got to be a way to stop this. And so he invents a pill that'll make a monkey numb from the waist down.
Does it stop it?
Yeah, that stops them. They stop right away. And the other side effect is it makes your pee blue. And then somebody says, well, if it works for monkeys, it would work for people too. And so people are forced to be on this drug that makes them numb from the waist down.
Wow.
And they take pee samples every once in a while to make sure that it's blue. And the hero, the protagonist, is Billy the poet. And Billy the poet goes around deflowering women. And he's seductionist. He doesn't rape them. He just comes in and says, you don't know what this is like. And his favorite women are the women at the ethical suicide parlors. They choose the most beautiful women in the culture to put them in these little buildings that you go into and say, hey, I think it's time for me to die. And they'll say, okay, and they'll strap you to a table and anesthetize you and then kill you. And so he's going around deflowering these women, and it's positive, because he makes progress. And at the end of it, he's still at large, and people are really angry with him, but he's doing a good job.
So he wasn't taking the pill or something?
Yeah, he wouldn't take the pill, and he brags about that. He's like, my tea isn't blue. And people are shocked by it. And I think all polite people would be taking the pill.
A Clockwork Orange.
Very good example, yeah.
Still one of my favorite novels of all time, and is rather dystopian as well.
Yeah. And based on a rather ugly message. Again, very much like Vonnegut, to say that people are brutal. And if you try to make them less brutal, you're doing them a disservice.
Yeah, but see, I very much disagree. That message more comes across due to the publishing error. The original novel, Clockwork Orange, had 21 chapters, and when it was published here in the United States, it had 20. They excised the final chapter in order to make the ending more in line with dystopian fiction like that.
I thought they excised that chapter to keep it in line with the Kubrick film.
No, Kubrick based his film off of the U.S. publication. In the 21st chapter of A Clockwork Orange, Alex, he finds himself a new group of droogs, and they're at the pub, or the bar, or whatever they were earlier in the story, and he runs into one of his earlier group, and they start talking, and the guy, he's married, he has kids, he's got a job, and something in Alex's brain clicks, and he makes the conscious choice to stop. To stop the ultraviolence, the drugs, the raping, the pillaging, all of it. He makes the conscious decision to stop. A Clockwork Orange is a novel about free will.
Yeah.
Not as much the brutality of humanity as the U.S. publication makes it to be, but more about if we are not allowed to choose, everything just goes to hell.
Yeah.
Free will is the most precious thing that we humans have in the world, and if we don't make good use of it, what's the point?
And you're reminding me of one of my favorite South Park episodes, where Big Gay Al is the scoutmaster. Big Gay Al is a scoutmaster, and they kick him out because he's gay, and they bring in another guy who's closeted, so he's not overtly gay, so he's okay as a scoutmaster, and he takes naked pictures of the boys.
Well,
but because he's not overtly gay, he's okay. They ended up taking it to court. They ended up getting a court injunction that says that the Boy Scouts of America has to bring Big Gay Al back in because they're violating civil rights. And Big Gay Al comes in and he says, that's not how you do it. You don't make a law that says that somebody has to obey a rule that they don't believe in. You wait till they believe in that rule. So he says, I'm waiting. And when they realize they err in their ways, legitimately, of their own accord, then I'll come back. But I don't want to be, legally compelled to do this. Which is, I think it's a nice point.
Exactly. You strap someone to a chair and basically hypnotize them into thinking that violence and sex are bad, to the point where you try to have sex with a girl and you become physically ill and incapable of standing. You're removing the free will. And I mean, sure, that person may have killed people, may have raped people, but it doesn't mean you should take away their humanity like that.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's also not reflected in the film, which is very good. But again, this is the whole wrap up point where Burgess basically hides the message of the entire story in the final chapter.
Yeah.
And you have to finish it in order to see that, and that's why I like my copy, because it has all 21 chapters.
Yeah. So it's like, I don't remember what TV show it was on, but somebody was talking about the film Old Yeller, and she said, I liked it because it had a happy ending. It turned out that her mom had always stopped before the last 10 minutes and said, and that's it.
Do you remember what that book was? I remember you and I were talking about before we started this class. It was the one where the people are born and they have this flower attached to their chest, and it starts off green. As they get older, it turns yellow, and then when they reach a certain age, like age 20, it turns red, which means that they only have 1 year left to live, and then it starts flashing red and they have to get killed.
Isn't that Logan's
that's
Run?
Logan's Run.
Yeah.
Yeah, because as I'm thinking about that, I'm thinking, wasn't it the Jewel in the Hand?
That's what
Life
it was.
Days,
Yeah.
Renew.
Yeah.
It's been a long time since I read that. I read that when I was 10.
But yeah,
I
Logan's
saw that
Run.
movie recently.
What's that?
I just saw that movie recently.
The original? Because there was a remake of it.
Yeah,
Was
the
it good?
original.
The original.
They're
Yeah.
remaking it again.
Is it good?
I liked it.
It was good?
I like
Okay, I got to see it.
It's pretty classic. It's up there with Soylent Green.
How long ago was that made?
76?
That's
Sounds like
about
a
right.
really
Because Farrah Fawcett Majors is in it, and nobody knew who she was at that point.
Whoa, Farrah Fawcett. I'm watching the original.
75, 76, yeah, somewhere in there. And,
She's
was it
like,
Lee?
what,
Was it
60?
Lee Majors who started it? Or no? Who was it?
I don't remember who starred in it.
I know the guy that starred in it was in Austin Powers. He was
Robert Wagner.
he was on was the commander to Austin.
Was he the guy?
Method and stuff. I forget
Michael
his name.
York.
That sounds right.
Yeah,
That sounds right. Yeah.
he played Basil.
And that one, it's interesting to watch. It's not the most. The special effects are not very good. My son would never watch it because he can't watch anything that has special effects from before 1990.
Must hate Doctor
Planet of the Apes.
He watches the new Doctor Who, not the old Doctor Who.
The new Doctor Who's still pretty bad.
Yeah, but it's good enough.
Oh, okay.
Another sci-fi added to the lexicon there is Planet of the Apes.
Yeah.
That's a really old one too. That's got to be 70s, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, early 70s. I think the original film might be 69.
Do you-
69.
Do you know what's classified as the very first dystopian, like what's recognized as the first dystopian novel? Oh, come on. It should have been on the tip of your tongue.
Oh, I really don't. You're talking about specifically science fiction or just dystopia in general?
Well, I would assume all dystopian is science fiction based generally, but I assume also that dystopian can be not science fiction. So
I mean, if you wanted to classify it as such, you could say that Candide is dystopian.
because it's in a world ruled by just kings, and then everyone else is completely below them, and even the kings aren't that wealthy.
Because it emphasizes the worst things in that culture, the absolute worst things could happen. And a couple of these people have been in a class with me where I taught Candide, but you know what Candide is?
Written by Voltaire.
Yeah.
The French Revolution. That was way before the French Revolution, wasn't it?
Yeah. But this happens a lot in these dystopian stories. The style is what they call a picaresque, where it's somebody who's traveling around from place to place and viewing things and reporting back on them.
Like the Odyssey.
Yeah, same. Now, Odyssey, I don't think would qualify as dystopian.
No. Because, I mean, like, the world has, the gods and the beasts and stuff, but everyone lives, pretty much normally. I mean, they're just totally fine with the fact that Cyclops exist and that the gods actually exist and everything.
Yeah.
You know, oh yeah, there's a Cyclops island about 30 miles south of here. It's cool. He's a nice guy. Ate a few of my children.
Oh, you want to go home? Oh, you're going to have to take your boat through hell.
Yeah.
Forgot to mention that,
Yeah,
sorry.
the Devil's Pass. Yeah, it's fun.
Wave to Hades.
So, one thing I want to make sure we talk about anytime we're looking at a novel is you're going to do an analysis, and I'm open to persuasion on this. I might let you write your analysis on a film. I think you're going to do a film. I'd want you to do a compare and contrast because it's pretty easy to write about a film. But I want to get into some sense of, well, I talked a little bit about schema, how schema works. That ideally an author can look at the audience and say, you guys are going to have a consensus of opinion. You guys are going to galvanize around certain things, and that's going to, create your reaction to this, and possibly your reaction to the world that created this. It's going to, make you feel a certain way politically. So, if that's what Vonnegut's doing, is he's trying to get a united reaction from the audience. You know that he's getting disappointed at the ending because the ending is just ugly. What other kinds of things do you think he's trying to get out of everyone in the audience? Most of the story is really, really ugly.
So he's trying to get a negative reaction?
Definitely he is trying to, but is there anything in it that's beautiful? Is there anything that you would look at in here and say, that's very nice?
The washing machine is really nice.
You're saying that kiddingly, but some of the characters, even some of the positive characters, Paul loves that lathe group that he set up. And he says it's obsolete and it should be torn down, but it's beautiful and I love it and I made it and it's a work of art.
Yeah, I think his view of, finding something that you want to do is a positive aspect in it.
Yeah. Yeah, having something you can take pride in. And that's, for Paul, he takes pride in that lathe group and says, even though it's making mistakes, we're going to keep it going. Anything else that you admire or look up to?
I liked that that it seemed to me, anyway, that Paul's father, and the reason that the group appoints him their figurehead and de facto leader there was that he was the director of everything and had more power than the president.
Yeah.
Or at least that's what it seemed like to me. He was the director of food and commerce and God knows what all. He had this really long title.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, it seems to me Vonnegut was saying, maybe the president isn't the highest on the food chain.
So what were the characteristics of Paul's father? Was he a good engineer, or was he a good leader of men, or was he good at being a pig and making other people do things that he wanted them to do? Or where do you place it? Because you don't hear much about who he actually was. You just know that he's just loved by absolutely everybody.
I would say that would fall into the category of the master manipulator.
Yeah.
Because if nobody can say a word against you, you're doing everything you need to do right.
Mm-hmm.
And you probably shouldn't be doing it that way.
Yeah.
Because you're probably doing something wrong, but you're doing it correctly.
Yeah. And you get into some interesting archetypes because it's not just in that film. I mean, that particular thing, the son who had the father who was very well known and everybody loved him, and he's trying to live up to that. Where else do you see that in science fiction?
Inception.
Yeah.
That was like the whole point of the film.
I was thinking Iron Man. And Iron Man, Tony Stark's father was a little questionable.
Thor.
Yeah. Sounded like he got in some, he got ahead sometimes by cheating people. And still made the world a better place, but was not that likable for it.
I was going to suggest Star Wars in that.
Absolutely, yeah.
I wonder if Star Wars would be classified as dystopian. I mean, you've got,
Oh, yeah.
the Empire is right there on the brink. They could take over your world at any time. There's always that fear. But then you see worlds like Tatooine where people don't really care. They're like, yeah, the Empire, whatever, they do searches, but they don't really bother us.
I would say the original trilogy could be classified as dystopia. I'm not entirely sure about the prequel trilogy all that much. Perhaps towards the end of the third film when he
The
declares.
prequel trilogy only counts for one classification. That's boring.
But when the Emperor declares that the Galactic Republic would be reorganized into the Empire, and it's like there's the start of a dystopia, the
Mhm.
birth of, and that's really interesting to me to see something like that actually happen in the
And you don't
story.
usually ever see the dystopian come to life. It's just you always start off in the middle of it, and then someone trying to fix it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it logically, dystopias would be really hard to bring to fruition. You're not going to see someone just like, all right, well, we're going to outlaw sex. And everyone's going to be like, okay, cool, thanks, government. It's nice, as long as I get to drink my Coke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are a few authors who describe the slow building of dystopias. Orson Scott Card has several series where he describes how, they gain more and more power and they become more and more corrupt. And he's really good at it.
Boy, he's gotten a lot of bad flack lately.
He's been
you
getting
open
bad
his mouth,
flack for
something
years
awful
because he
comes
won't
out.
shut up.
And that's the thing, is I try not to pay attention to his politics, because I've known some authors who I really loved what they wrote, but I didn't get along with them very well as people. And you could be an excellent writer, and maybe not a very good human being, and that's just fine. I'm not saying that about Card. I mean, Card, he's got his political beliefs and he's got what he writes about. But I think he works out some things in his writing that he doesn't realize are going on in his life. I happen to think that Ender's Game is a little homoerotic.
Yeah, the whole naked shower death match that they left out of the movie, I can see why they left it out of the movie, because it was a couple little kids having a naked shower death match.
Yeah.
And they actually did that in the movie. They did that in Eastern Promises, where they had a naked shower fight to the death. But that's such a ridiculous thing.
Yeah.
That there's just no way that could happen believably under any circumstances.
Yeah.
They did a really good one in Eastern Promises. I mean, somebody attacks you in a bathroom, I mean...
It's not that it wasn't.
You can't really put on some underwear and then keep fighting.
It's just not believable that something like that would happen.
Well, see,
I
I
haven't done.
I have a better like.
Hundreds of people get killed in prisons, showers, I mean...
It wasn't a prison. It was like a spa, wasn't it? Or a sauna.
Yeah.
Well,
That was the problem I had with it. It just seemed so implausible. I have an
Easier
easier
to get a
time.
knife into.
I have an easier time believing in the force of Star Wars than I do that something like that would happen in the world where magic doesn't work. That's,
Well,
that's
okay,
how
if you're reading as a new critic,
You got his throat slit just by, oh, I'm getting a haircut. Guys walked in. That's just as believable as somebody going after somebody in a sauna.
Yeah.
well, what a new critic would do with this, because the new critic says the author is always king, the author knows what he's doing, is you look at things that are implausible, and almost always things that are implausible are allegorical. So, is there something allegorical within Ender's Game about kids having to fight naked?
That's a big question, doesn't it?
Because, normally they're wearing flash suits, or they're inside spaceships, and that whole idea, I think it may be something that he's trying to do there, talking about vulnerability.
I would say it was more about vulnerability than anything else. I mean, I could see the homoerotic subtext if the writing was different, but in the story, Ender was 6, 7 at that time,
Yeah.
and Bonzo was 12. And in the story, anyway, they aged both parties up. They aged a lot of the characters up for the film,
Yeah.
unfortunately. But you can't really have a 6-year-old do a lead role like that. But I don't see that kind of subtext when they're of that age.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that's how Card intended it, especially with him, as much as I hate to bring up his politics, being very homophobic.
Yeah.
But but Ender's Game you've got dystopia, you've got well-written female characters, Jane and Valentine.
Yeah.
And all sorts of different things that fall under these series of books.
Yeah. We talk about stuff in literature that's canonical, meaning it's must read, it's stuff that you have to know. I think that story and other things that Card has written have become canonical. And I can tell, I've been looking a little bit at the survey results, and it's pretty clear that some of you know who the canonical authors are, because people like Silverberg, Ellison, they're getting a lot of votes, even though they write very, very long stories. You know, most people look through saying, what's the shortest one? Okay, I'll vote for that one. But people who are canonical are doing well. But I haven't gotten the results yet, but it's looking like Tale of the Flag is doing really well. And what's the one? It's the person's name. Don't remember.
Who wrote it?
I don't even remember who wrote it, because I haven't read them all yet. But this one, it's one person's last name. It's just one word as the title.
You've got your anthology.
It's Harrison Bergeron, but Ron Vonnegut's in there, but I don't think anybody picked it.
I didn't let you do that one, and I think I don't want to say Vonnegut's a one-trick pony, but
Title is just the last name.
Harrison Bergeron, as a story, it just focuses so much on the idea that people, when they are hobbled, when they are, dragged down, become something less than human. And it's just so beautiful when he goes against it at the very end, and so sad when he dies. But it's, I think it's very similar to Player Piano, just on a smaller scale.
Was it Peter Skilling?
Yeah, Peter Skilling.
Okay.
Yeah.
My Alex Urban.
Yeah, that was
Looking
very
at it.
popular.
I actually read this Paolo Bacigalupi story a few years ago in the short story collection he wrote. He's got a lot of really good ideas.
Yeah. What I'm surprised about, and I don't want this to sound wrong, but up until recently, I have never seen any Chinese or Japanese or otherwise Asian authors in science fiction. It's been a pretty white thing up until
They're
now.
too busy making anime, that's why.
I don't know what it is, but now there are 3, maybe 4 who are just at the top of their game, and people are really starting to know who they are. So,
Short story I read was Ken Liu.
uh-huh.
Perfect Match, I think it was called.
Yeah.
I thought that was another good science fiction type story based on technology that I don't want to give it away, but that helps people do absolutely everything.
Mm-hmm.
The results of it.
Yeah, and people just rave about him. He's gotten very, very good reviews. One more canonical thing, and then we'll close it off for today. But you just got to know this. Any of you not know who Jonathan Colton is?
I know who John Colton is.
Don't know who he is?
I might not know.
Okay, he's a musician. He had a thing called Thing a Week, where he put out a song every week, and he's really good. He's really fun, but he's got a lot of things based on dystopian stuff. Jay was describing a story where the people are working in mines, and he's got one that's just hilarious. It's one of those greeting cards that people send out, and it says, "Merry Christmas from Chiron Beta Prime. We're working in a mine for our robot overlords." Did I say overlords? I meant protectors. And the whole thing is like that. It's very, very funny. But there's a story in here called "The Things That Make Me Weak and Strange Get Engineered Away," and that's a reference to a Jonathan Colton song, where that's a line in a song called "Future Soon," which is really nice, funny, dystopian stuff. So if you get a chance, look up Jonathan Colton.
I thought I recognized the title from something. I was like, oh, I have that on my MP3 player.
Yeah.
I was listening to Re Your Brains on the way over here.
Yeah. All right, anything else? Nope. Okay. See the films, and I'll see whoever I see next week. Thanks for coming.